Hello everyone, let's talk about hero worship. So, why do people worship heroes? And I don't necessarily just mean worship in the sense of, like praying to them like they're a god or a spirit. But hero worship in general, like idolize them. Why do people worship heroes? So, who we choose to be, or at least the group that we choose to be, maybe of a group, maybe of one person, or an individual, a being, who we choose says a lot about us. It says a lot about what we want in life, who we want to be, and how we think the world would improve if more people were like that person usually, or practice the same thing that person does, or perhaps carried out the same deeds. Who we, in our minds, hold up on that pedestal says a lot about what we want for the world, for ourselves, and also oftentimes when we look to maybe an internal monologue with this figure in times of fear or regret or pain, we might ask ourselves, what would so-and-so do? What would so-and-so say? And maybe perhaps have an inner dialogue in our own heads with ideas, maybe, not necessarily, you acting like you're the other person, perhaps. I do that, but not everybody does that. Now, this might seem a little bit of a random direction to take, but you know what I like about a lot of Buddhist statues? Especially the ones of, well, there's many that are just like this, but there's the Buddhist statues that are just sitting. They're not holding anything, but they're just sitting. They're not jutting their chin up high or anything like that, but just sitting in meditation, eyes closed, hands in lap, and also kind of androgynous. So kind of could be male or female. Siddhartha Gautama and other Buddhas are often depicted as being neither male nor female, perhaps both, trying to speak to both genders. Also, it's a representation of being, the best of both genders in a way, but trying to speak to everybody. But what I like about those statues where they're just sitting meditating, not looking down on you imperiously, not actually even really holding any weapon or symbol of power, just sitting with hands in lap. What I like about those statues is that I always play out in my head, what if all human beings were gone and there was some alien race that, I don't know why I do this, and there's some alien race that, don't cover up the camera, that came here and found all of our statues, or perhaps there was some kind of apocalypse, and maybe there's not a lot of book sources, or many generations later, people were coming out of the bunkers, or perhaps happening upon places that weren't destroyed during the nuclear apocalypse or something like that. What could they discern from the statues that remain, assuming they find some, from the symbols, without any explanation, without anybody to tell them what it means or what that person is doing, or why there is a statue of this person or being to begin with, why people made statues. What if they didn't know that? What if they didn't know any of that? A lot of statues, let's use Lenin as an example. It's a huge statue standing really tall, kind of chin pronounced out forward, with his hand like this, beckoning forward, kind of like an imposing figure, very you could say masculine, I suppose, very dominating, very upright, obviously pointing and leading people. And then maybe you have a statue of Thor, nice big hammer, let's say. I don't know how many big statues of Thor there are out there, but let's use this as an example. Big hammer in hand, for using the actual historical, as far as actual written sources, Thor's actually redhead and kind of fat. But let's use the one from, let's say, Marvel, or the one that people usually think of when we think of Thor. Odin's over there calling at me. No, that's probably Hugin or Moonin. Anyway, we'll use Thor as an example. Weapon in hand, chariot pulled by 2 goats. A little bit confusing there, probably, for anybody. Because if they knew what goats were, goats aren't very strong, and they'd be like, is this person extra strong? Like, is this a person? What is this? Like, assuming they didn't know about gods. Obviously, a grim expression or a ferocious expression on his face. Hammer raised, about to strike. Things you could assume with that. With a Buddhist statue sitting down, it's like, it's hard to, it's not a lot of symbols. They're just sitting there. What I would like to think that would happen is that I think a lot of people would be like, oh, what if I just sit like that? And I just stay completely still like this statue. And then in my little happy-go-lucky fantasy world, I like to think that meditation could be retaught just by copying those statues if this scenario happened. Or if aliens found this place, and they probably know about meditation. Anyway, but in our minds, we usually have a hero figure that doesn't change a whole lot, or if our relationship changes, it's more like we're going around this ideological statue in our head, rather than it actually changing. Because our conception of heroes, it doesn't seem to change for people as much as people change. So it's almost like hero worship is having this statue in your head, an idea of this, all these various stories that surround this being, this God, this spirit, or, well, I went back to gods and spirits, this person. There's a certain amount of stories, but just like gods and spirits, there's a certain amount of stories surrounding this person, and if you know them all, then it's almost like these stories are a statue in your mind that it's just there, that is stationary, that you are circumambulating, going around. And I think it's good to have role models. But I think what helps us change is to continuously learn about more and more individuals who perhaps are of the same tradition, spirituality, religion, or group, political ideology, but learn about more and more individuals, so that the gravity of the ideas around all these individuals in your head allows you to have a bigger universe of individuals and ideas. So you're not limiting to yourself to a single role model. Because we have so many possibilities within us, to limit ourselves to the possibilities of a single individual might keep us from trying other things, or keep us from hitting marks that we can actually hit. Because sometimes these individuals that we hero worship, or a lot of the time actually, there's so much more that those are high marks to hit. So I think it's important for us to learn about more individuals around that individual, disciples, or perhaps little stories of how disciples got to that person, or how followers got to that person, and different related traditions, even like if it's a politician or something, related, political offshoots. I'm using mainly spirituality, of course, as you can tell by my language, but it's good to keep on adding to your stone garden that you have in your head of individuals that perhaps you idolize. I could tell you not to idolize anybody, but I mean, even if you don't use that word, we tend to have role models. That's just kind of what we do. It goes back to, how we evolved and all that, but never stop expanding the stories in your head and the individuals that those stories surround. You might find that the little pearls of wisdom are not in the big role models, but the small, because they can tell us because they're closer to us. It's the same reason why people often work with saints and don't just work with Jesus or God, is because they're kind of like a in between. I learned so much from studying Swami Kriyananda's works, Paramahansa Yogananda's works are remarkable, but Swami Kriyananda's works, I learned so much about his relationship to Paramahansa Yogananda through all these little stories, and my stone garden expanded mentally. There's a whole lot of little stories and a whole lot of stuff that Paramahansa Yogananda taught to Kriyananda that he didn't say to anybody else, for instance. So Kriyananda's like a step between. I hope that this is making sense. I think overall hero worship, it needs to be mitigated. We need to be realistic, and we need to think about the world that we want to see and the person that we want to become. So why do we hero worship? That's a question I think you have to answer for yourself. And, it'd be easy to say become the hero. It's the idea. If you can, do that. If you're trying to hit a mark that's too high, just understand that you don't have to be, you just have to try. I think that's the lesson for this video. At any rate, I hope this has been interesting. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, shoot them down in the comment section below on YouTube. Feel free to become a patron on Patreon at patreon.com/darkrealist, capital D, capital R. I share ritual journal entries that I don't share anywhere else, personal insights in those journal entries, as well as other insights and writings that I don't share anywhere else, and you'll get all my YouTube videos in one place. At any rate, thank you very much for watching. Hit that like button. Feel free to comment, and all of you, have a wonderful day.